Hello, hello. It's really, really great to see so many of you here today at this extraordinary chat and fireside that we actually wanted to have for a very, very long time. It's a great honor to have Alex Tabarrok with us, professor of economics in the US, one of the not only famous, but really cool economists that engages in many of the most interesting subjects that we tackle today. So welcome, Alex, and maybe we'll start with a bit of your background, advising the US, some lessons, maybe some ideas around how to avoid a regulatory disaster. I intentionally framed the conversation as how to kill an economy, or maybe how not to kill it, just for us to think a bit about how easy it is to suffocate an economy and how hard it is to put the things in place that accelerate it. So welcome again, and very, very curious to hear your thoughts.
Sure, it's great to be here. Yeah, so the last thing I did was doing some advisory work for the US government. My colleagues and I, including Nobel laureate Michael Cremer, had recommended to the US government to start building the vaccine factories even before any vaccine was approved, so that they were ready to go the minute you had a vaccine approved, and to use advanced market commitments to guarantee sales. And that's eventually what Operation Warp Speed did. I don't know what influence we had, but that is what Operation Warp Speed did, so I was very happy about that. I think around the world, the vaccines have saved 20 million lives, so I'm pretty pleased about my role, whatever influence I had there, my role. But I think it's still my second most important advisory project.
Very curious to hear about your first most important advisory project.
So I think it was 2018 when you had contacted me about MultiversX.
Elrond at that point.
Elrond at that time, yes, that's right, yeah, Elrond at that time. I was pretty excited about it, and I thought the connection with Romania was interesting, because Romania has a long history of advancements in mathematics, is very good, and in science, so I thought, like, being in Romania, you'd be able to get a lot of scientific advice and personnel and so forth, and I thought that was good. And I thought that I think Romanians, maybe they're very ambitious, and maybe they want to prove something to the world. Maybe that was just you.
We definitely want to prove something. It's also interesting on my side how I came to discover Alex and read some of his work and so forth. Interestingly enough, there are some more cool economists at George Mason, and one of the colleagues of Alex Tabarrok is Brian Kaplan, which has a Romanian wife. Interestingly enough, this I only discovered very, very recently, but reading some of his books, I then started digging into more materials and so forth. This is how I discovered Alex, and then was fascinated by some of the materials on marginal revolution, the books, Marginal University, the materials that were created. And it was almost a dream come true, having the proper conversation, hearing some thoughts and so forth. And it's even more fascinating to have you here with us finally and have this conversation. So I'm really curious what you think are maybe some of the most productive strategies to accelerate an economy, to accelerate economic growth. And then maybe the converse question to that, what are some of the very elemental mistakes that you see maybe countries, even like US, doing at this point and that are stifling innovation?
Yeah. So let me pivot back to Operation Warp Speed for a minute, because I think that does illustrate one of the ways of accelerating an economy, which was a public-private partnership, right? What Operation Warp Speed did was it harnessed the incredible buying power of the American government with the speed, with the ingenuity, with the capabilities of the private sector. And it's really this working, the invisible hand and the visible hand working together, that was able to accelerate the approval of vaccines, to reduce regulation, reduce the FDA regulation, get things out much faster, save lives. So I think that, what I call the sort of the American model of a public-private partnership, particularly in an emergency situation like this, that's what worked really well. Now, in contrast, at the same time, in the United States, we have exactly the opposite situation with high tech and with blockchain particularly. So one of the things I hadn't figured when I was thinking about, well, is Romania a good place, to start a blockchain company? I hadn't realized, 2018, that the United States would be the worst regulatory system for blockchain in the entire world, right? I mean, this is just insane. Because here we have an opportunity, the United States has an opportunity to take a leading role in a technology which is going to revolutionize the world, is extremely important. The United States was totally well placed, and they are giving it up. They are destroying it. It's extremely disturbing.
Yeah, I'm actually very, very puzzled how smart people generally come to do this type of mistakes, which are not small. Like, to see the benefits and then still somehow put so much effort into killing something repeatedly, killing something that does not die easily. That always puzzles me, and especially when it comes from the US, which historically has been the hotbed of innovation, distillation of ingenuity, and so forth. So I'm curious, what do you see might be some of the most useful things that an economy, the ministers, a country might do to foster this type of innovation, to accelerate actually blockchain technology, AI, the metaverse technologies, and so forth?
Yeah, so let me give you, one of the other projects as an example of what not to do that I was a part of, was Library, LBRY, which is just wrapped up because it's been destroyed. Was destroyed by the SEC. And Library was YouTube on the blockchain, and it was a real product. I mean, it was a working product. It had consumers. It had people using it. It had investors interested in it. And the SEC chose to destroy this product. Not to go after. There's a lot of fraud. In this space, as we know. But the SEC didn't go after the bad guys. They went after the good guys. They went after Library with a real, actual working product, and they destroyed it.
Why do you think that is?
So I have some theories. I don't know for sure, but I think one possibility is that some parts of the government want to hold off on decentralized blockchain technology in order to create a CBDC, a central bank digital currency. Because a central bank digital currency could give the government eyes on every single transaction occurring anywhere in a country, right? It would be a tremendous advance for the government in terms of surveillance. So right now I see decentralized blockchain and CBDC as in a race. And if you guys don't win, if the decentralized world doesn't win, then we are going to be heading towards a mass surveillance of financial transactions, unlike any that we've seen before. And and we already saw just the beginnings of that, where people would start, well, you're protesting, you're in Canada, you're protesting against, restrictions on your liberties because of the clampdown. We're going to take away your access to the banking system, right? You want to do, some of these technologies. Well, sorry, you can't use PayPal. You can't use the Visa. We're going to cut you off. So that is my worry.
I've been thinking about this a lot. If the founding fathers were alive today, and would know about the technologies we have, how might the Constitution actually look? Especially given the inalienable rights that we might want to position as something that no one can violate, irrespective of what people may think and so forth, and especially with some of the things that have been put in the Constitution, which in the US, I think are singularly, which enables the people to organize against the government, for instance, and take it down and reorganize that. So I'm curious if you think what would be the 3-4 things that the founding fathers would put in the Constitution today as inalienable rights, given the technologies we have?
Yeah, so as you know, in the United States, we have the First Amendment, which protects free speech, and we have the Second Amendment, which is the right to arms. And many people in the United States, they support the Second Amendment, the right to arms, as a means of potentially, countering the government, of having an overthrow. But I think realistically, that is no longer true, right? That your personal arms are no longer good enough. But what I think we can do, and what I think the Founding Fathers would do if they could rewrite the Constitution today, is say, the Third Amendment, we have a right to cryptography. You have a right to privacy, and the means of making that privacy possible. Like, it's not enough just to say, Fourth Amendment, you have a right to protect against search and seizure, but that is only guaranteed to the extent that the government says, okay, we're going to follow the rules. What we need is a right to cryptography, which says the government has no choice. Okay, they cannot break it. That is how you protect search and seizure. That is how you protect privacy. You can't just, and again, also with free speech. It's not enough just to say you have a right to free speech, because that also depends upon the courts and depends upon all levels of government of respecting that right. Instead, you need cryptography, which instantiates that right, which makes that right impossible to take away. So I think a right to cryptography guarantees a right to privacy, guarantees an arms against the government.
I very much agree, and this, I think, goes back to the insights that the cyberpunk movement had in the 90s. Precisely that as the powers of different entities, the states, the companies, whatever, grow tremendously, it is only through cryptography that you can truly defend everything else. Without cryptography, it's only a matter of time and a matter of will to take everything that you have away. And having a law that ensures this type of, let's say, ownership, the right to ownership, the right to free expression and all of that is great, but having it embedded in code such that it can never be touched, that takes the idea to a completely new level. That would be, in some sense, almost scary to governments at first. But if you think about it, this sets the stage for an incomparably more productive conversation. Because if the collaboration, the conversations would not rely on violence or coercion, but rather on incentives, on conversations that we would have. And this being said, I do think that there's a space for a new type of constitution being written in today's world. And I would encourage all governments of the world and even the government of Romania to engage in this type of conversations, because there are a lot of extraordinarily smart people that would immediately contribute, engage, and put a lot of efforts into that. Now, maybe moving one step towards the idea of blockchains, Web3, AI, and this type of technologies. I know there's a theory about the last, let's say, 30, 40 years that says that we've been in a kind of great stagnation. I'm very curious to hear a bit about what the core idea of that theory is and why you think it might have been like that. and how you think the next 10, 20 years could be if we do the right kind of decisions.
Yeah. So my colleague, Tyler Cowen, I think, coined the term the Great Stagnation, though a lot of other people have looked at it as well. And I think kind of the best way of thinking about it, we think we live in a technologically advanced age, and in some respects we do. But think about somebody who was born around 1900, okay? So in 1900, there is no television, there is no radio, there is no automobiles, okay? There are no airplanes, right? It is...
Healthcare is really bad.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. And then think about somebody in 1950, 50 years later, okay? So in 1950, it's very recognizably the modern world. You have cars, you have aircraft, you have the beginnings even of computers, you have radio, you have television, we're already talking about satellites, okay? So 1950 is completely the modern world. Now you take from 1950 to 2000, well, we got computers. I mean, that's great, right? We have the internet. But the change between 1950 and 2000 is much less than the change between 1900 and 1950. And I think there is a reason for that, and that was particularly beginning in the 1970s. You know, we had this massive pushback against technology. We had the most obvious examples being, we said, no to faster than sound aircraft. You know, we said no to supersonic aircraft. No, we don't want supersonic aircraft. Why not? It's too noisy. That's why we gave up the chance for me to get here in 2 or 3 hours instead of 10, because it's too noisy. Like, put on some headphones, dude. You know, I mean, this was crazy, right? Same thing with nuclear power. Okay, we gave up nuclear power at just the time, like if we had pushed nuclear power in the 1970s on the trajectory that it was going, there would be no climate crisis today, okay? So it's unbelievable that the environmentalists pushed against basically a zero pollution technology.
Paradoxically.
Yeah, crazy. So I think we had this great stagnation, and the question is, now are we ready to get out of it? And I think it's a cultural change, it's a scientific change, it's a technological change. You know, we have internet, blockchain, fantastic. Notice that almost all of the innovations are digital, right? But we have to translate that into building in meat space in the real world. Right? We have to bring digital technology, but we have to bring that same enthusiasm for improvement, for growth, to building new buildings, to better transportation, you know, to going into space, going to Mars, you know, changing the brain. We got to have genetic technologies, right? So we got to push on all of the margins into the future, not just on the digital margin.
And I think there was this very insightful line from Peter Thiel that captured the essence of the idea when he said that we wanted flying cars and all we got was 140 characters, just alluding to Twitter and all of that. And I do think that a lot of the interesting things that have been done have been outlawed, regulated to death, almost. And interestingly enough, the only place where you could create from scratch new ideas and move forward with them was computer science. It was almost the last battleground where the innovators, builders, and so forth could come with fresh ideas and push them forward with very, very rapid speed. So I'm curious, the thesis or the theme of the XA conference is not only building bridges, but we're intentionally focusing on one thing, the renaissance of European ambition. I think if we look back historically, Europe was the bedrock of modern civilization. A lot of the scientific ideas, cultural movements, and productive conversation started in different parts of Europe. But interestingly enough, it has been lagging behind really, really badly during the last period. What do you think might be the most important 3, 4 things that Europe could do to reignite this spark and restart the engine of growth? Because interestingly enough, a lot of the things that you are mentioning that we've been actually doing in the US the last 50 years. So how do we move some of this progress, or not move, but parallelize some of this progress to accelerate it in the European region as well, and also in Romania to accelerate it further?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think you say Europe, I think Eastern Europe in particular is incredibly important because it's in Eastern Europe where I do see lots of ambition, pro-growth, pro-capitalism, pro-markets, pro-private public partnerships, and this desire to have technological progress and economic growth. I see that much more in Eastern Europe than in Western Europe. I think maybe Western Europe, however, maybe is going to get a kick in the pants, okay? Is going to say, hey, what's going on? But I think, I look at Italy, for example. Italy has had basically zero per capita GDP growth in 20 to 25 years. Now, to me, that would be like unheard of. That would be like revolution in the streets. But, you know, it's pretty nice living in Italy. You have to live with your parents, but, you know, the Italians have it pretty good, right?
Nice parents, nice parents.
But in Romania, like we see the desire to catch up and exceed. So, 30 years ago, Romania was far behind Italy, and today Romania has almost caught up in per capita GDP. And I see Romania may very well overtake in the next 5 years.
Woo!
Yeah.
I do remember when I started reading on economics and some of the macroeconomic units of measure through which you could see progress and so forth. And I was looking for this one thing through which you could measure the well-being of the economy and measure almost everything else that you would like to be good in an economy. And when I stumbled upon economic growth and GDP and so forth, of course, seeing that it's incomplete, like it's just another tool, a good proxy, but incomplete, it became so fascinating to me, and it at the same time puzzled me. How come people were not asking this almost every day? Like, how can we accelerate economic growth? Because if there's one question that should be on the mind of every political actor, every country in the world, then it's how can we accelerate economic growth? It turns out that if you have economic growth, almost everything else fixes itself. In time, things realign magically. You see the education system getting better, you see the healthcare system getting better, you see infrastructure getting better. But interestingly enough, if you don't have economic growth, you see this zero-sum game perverse mentality that just brings you to the ground with revolutions and so forth. So I'm curious how you see this being reverted in Europe. As you said, there is a tremendous potential in Eastern Europe, Romania, especially with engineering minds, brilliant minds in mathematics, physics, and so forth, that are literally the top minds in the world in some of these fields. So channeling that energy toward the problems that really matter, I do believe will bring some growth. But I'm curious how you see this and maybe how this ties to technology. The 3, 4 technologies that you see could bring tremendous growth for the next period.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit on it exactly right. And I think the real difficulty is that both of these equilibria can be self-sustaining, and that is the problem. That is, if you think that there isn't going to be growth, then yes, it's a zero-sum society, and you put all of your resources into trying to divide the pie in your favor, which means patents and copyrights and lawsuits, and also culturally, like in the United States, we have divisions, race and sex and gender, and how are we going to get the right slice of the pie, to the right gender, and so forth, right? And so it's all about chopping it up in different ways. Who gets what? So all the debates are about dividing the pie. On the other hand, if you think that we're going to have economic growth, and you think pro-technology, pro-capitalism, pro-markets, pro-building, then you worry much less about those questions, because everybody can get a larger slice of a growing pie. And then you put less emphasis on the lawsuits and all of that, all of the things which divide us, and you put more emphasis on the things which we have in common, like how are we going to live longer? How are we going to improve life expectancy? How are we going to get better housing? How are we going to get the flying cars, right? All of these things we all have an interest in together. And so you have a positive sum game. And the difficulty is that both of those are equilibria, right? And it all depends upon the choice. So you have to have, if I may use the phrase, you have to have the faith in growth, and you will have growth, right? And if you have
self-fulfilling prophecy.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I was mentioning indeed in the opening conversations that a lot of this has to do with perhaps seeing these visions first, seeing how the future could be better, how each of us could be in a much better place benefiting of technology and so forth. But unless we put really, really significant efforts toward that, this will not magically happen. Of course, it is an action, it is a decision to see that first and then put the effort. And this is why I also believe that Romania and some other countries in Europe have an extreme opportunity to not only catch up, but to lead in some of these conversations, precisely because blockchain, for instance, can be the hotbed for a new type of constitution, for a new type of embedded guaranteed rights that cannot be taken away from you, whether it's ownership, markets, and so forth. So maybe one last idea or point. If you would look 5 or 10 years in the future, especially at this 3 technologies, blockchain or Web3, AI, and the metaverse, what would you say would be one crazy prediction for each of them that you think will surprise the most of the people in the world?
Yeah, so I think if I put them together, I think right now we're seeing artificial intelligence as something you chat with ChatGPT, but I think a lot of it actually is AIs are going to be the customers. So one connection between AI and blockchain is that a cryptocurrency is really the only currency that an AI can use. The AI does not have to show ID, right? So cryptocurrencies and artificial intelligence go together because that is the money. Cryptocurrency is the money for AIs. And so AIs themselves are going
Will they take over through cryptocurrency?
Well, it's a good question. I do think we need to, I'm pro-technology, I'm pro-growth, we need to think about these things, but I want to see some problems before we start restricting the technology, right? Okay. But AIs, as users of cryptocurrency, as users of blockchain, I think many of your customers will be AIs, and that's the way to think about the future.
I welcome our future customers, not only users from all over the world, but all AIs all over the world. I do think that there is a possibility to have a kind of roaring decade. It almost seems like because we're undecided, because we always go back and forth on the different ideas, and we don't really set our minds on a few things and push till the end of the world to reach them, we always get we definitely get some economic growth, we definitely get some benefits, but we could indeed have a roaring decade of progress. And I do hope that some of these conversations actually spark either new technologies or new bridges that are built in society to take these technologies seriously, embed them into society. And I want to thank you, Alex, for being with us. And it's extraordinarily always to have a conversation with you. Thank you.
Multiverse.